Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Two Rivers Tuesday. I'm Maggie Colella here with Jesse Disney and John Teague. How are you, John?
I'm doing wonderful this morning. We're a little giggly here at the beginning. Yes.
All right, here's my question for you, John.
Yep.
Are you a cash person? Do you carry cash?
I do have some cash in my wallet. I have no idea how much it is. And I don't hardly ever use it. Mm-hmm. It's really just in case my kids need something.
Do you keep cash also in your truck?
Negative.
Just in your wallet? What about coins? Do you have any coins?
If I have any coins in my truck, it was on accident.
Yes.
I used to have a plastic, like a little Ziploc baggie, like full of change that was in the console of my truck. And I don't know how it got there, but then I was like, I'm glad it's there. I don't remember putting it there, but then I was like, hey, I'm glad it's there in case, I don't know, I run into something and, I find myself somewhere in another country where they don't take credit cards.
Yes. And then they would take those coins.
They would definitely take those coins. Yes. American coins.
Some fun fact about me, I hate coins. Like, I think that they are so annoying.
Yeah.
And just anytime I find one in my house, I'm like bothered by it.
Really?
Like, yeah. Jake, anytime we go to a store and he doesn't get great customer service, he says they must hate money. Like, meaning like if they would give good customer service, like they'd make so much more money, but they must hate money because they're not giving good customer service.
Yes.
And this is the definition of I hate money, because when I find coins,
You're
I'm
like,
just
I hate money.
I hate this.
Yeah. I'd rather throw it away than have that money.
Yes.
It's
truly.
not even money to you.
Yes.
It holds no value.
Yes, it's worthless. And with kids, like they that goes straight to the mouth.
They put it in their mouths.
Absolutely. And it's disgusting.
I swallowed a coin one time when I was a kid.
Really?
Yep. And you know what parents say? No, it definitely came out.
Oh.
Yeah, it came out. Because that's what it does. It makes its way through.
Yes.
Your body's not going to break that down. It's going to push that on back out.
Do you use Apple Pay?
Apple Pay. I don't. Is that where like you send money to other people? I use Venmo for that.
Okay. Do you like have your credit cards on your phone where you can pay with your phone?
I have a credit card saved on my phone, but I don't ever do the thing where I tap my phone.
Your phone. Oh, you are missing out.
I just don't even think about doing that.
You are missing out.
Really?
Yeah. You need to step into the future.
Okay.
And step into the present day.
Now, right?
Yeah, step into the now.
Like 3 years ago.
And start paying. It changed my life.
Really?
Yes.
Would you say it changed your life in a good way?
For sure. Yes. Yep. Yeah. I'm bad at knowing where my wallet is.
Okay.
Or credit cards or license. And so that has helped because I'm no longer like stuck at places without my wallet.
Yeah. That would be a good thing. I think maybe it's like a total dad move where it's like I always have my wallet. I always have my wallet.
That is a total dad move.
Yeah.
Very responsible.
Yeah. Maybe so. And I've got lots of receipts in that wallet.
Wow. Receipts.
Things that I don't even need anymore. I've probably got somebody's business card in there. Who knows? Now, it's not like a George Costanza wallet. Like that thing was like
thick.
You don't even know what I'm talking about.
No, I don't even know who that is.
That's like a thing from Seinfeld.
Oh,
George Costanza
yes.
from Seinfeld.
Okay, I'm with you now.
Okay. And his wallet, they did a whole episode on his wallet. And it was probably 4 inches, 5 inches thick, and mine's not like that.
That's good. Yeah, so. I couldn't. Do you have a chain that you keep your wallet on?
No, but
did you? You did at one point, didn't you?
I never did a chain.
Oh, wow.
I never was a wallet chain guy. I wasn't cool enough.
All right, why did you talk about this on Sunday?
Yeah, well, before we started recording, I was like, why did I talk about all of this? And the reason I was talking about financial stuff, cash, credit, debt, is because Jesus uses this economic term of debt to describe our sin in the Lord's Prayer. And so I was just trying to get us thinking about this because I think that in our world today, we have grown very accustomed to debt, and some of us are feeling the weight of a lot of it. And some of us just absolutely hate it and avoid it at all costs, but it is a part of our world. It's a part of our culture. It's a part of our lives, especially in America. And when it comes to our sin, like, we have to be careful that we don't adopt maybe some cultural feelings about debt. Like, we should not want to carry debt around with us. Yeah. We don't want to feel that. We don't want to be a slave to that, like we can feel when we're under the weight of financial debt.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So we talked about this line in the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our debts. And so the reason you were kind of walking through all that is because Jesus had a reason for using this metaphor. So if we want to understand this line, it helps us to kind of dive deep into what this metaphor means and all of that. But before we kind of continue in that, I want to talk a little bit more about the Lord's Prayer as a whole. I think it would be tempting to view all of these sermons as like individual sermons, but it's like a series, so it's all connected. And so I was just reflecting again on this idea that we've been coming back to week after week, that this is not just a pattern of prayer, but it's a vision for our life. And so I was just reflecting on, okay, what type of life will praying this prayer lead me into? So let's talk a little bit about the first couple ones. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. If I'm praying that regularly and that is like forming my heart, what kind of person, what kind of life will that lead to?
Well, I'll tell you how it's affected me just in the last couple of months, just really having this top of mind. It has helped me as I think about being a child, and I think about my own children and how they have no problem coming to me with pretty much anything, any request, any frustration, any gripe, anything. And I think if I look at God, not as some cosmic distant deity, but as my Father, then I can come to him with anything. And I can trust that, just like I know that sometimes I can't grant the request of my children, but I can talk to them about it. Like, I know that he's going to do that in an even better way. And so I can trust him with these things. So come to him with these things, right? So I have a Father, I can come to him. That just has been something that has helped me bring even more than I might normally bring to him. Not just the big things, but even the little things.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is very foundational for every line in the prayer that comes after that, because who are we coming to with these debts? That same Father. And if we know and trust his heart for us and who he is, and that we can come into his chambers whenever we want, and he's not annoyed with us, he's not frustrated with us, he's not waiting there in irritation, waiting to slap our wrists, then we can come to him with those debts because he's eager to forgive us. So I love where this line is positioned in the prayer, that it comes after us remembering and believing that we have a Father in heaven. It comes after us hallowing his name and remembering how great his name is, and that breeds in us a desire for our lives to also reflect and hallow his name. And then it comes after wanting his kingdom to come and wanting his will to be done. When our heart is being formed to want his kingdom and to want his will, then it makes sin look so much less enticing, because it's well, that's not bringing his kingdom, that's not accomplishing his will in my life, so I want that debt off my plate even more now. And then we come to give us this day our daily bread, which we talked about last week, just this rest and trust that he is enough and he will provide. And again, that leads me to any other sin just looks less satisfying when I trust him to provide. So I just encourage you, as you're reflecting on this week in particular, to not divorce it from the rest of the Lord's Prayer, but to really sit in where the context of where this line is located and the Father that you have and all that this prayer is kind of forming in our hearts, and then say, forgive us our debts.
Yes.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about this line you said on Sunday. You said Jesus knows perfect union with the Father and wants that for us. So how does our sin affect that union?
I wanted to make sure that we understood that we our standing with God does not change. We stand before him justified because of what Jesus has accomplished. So that doesn't change. But just the relational aspect of things, I use the word disrupt. I think it disrupts the relationship. It's like if you have a relationship with a friend or you have a relationship with your spouse, and one person does something to sort of to wrong the other person or to hurt the other person, it doesn't mean you're not married anymore. But it does mean that there is there's now something in the way of your intimacy, right? Like of you really trusting one another and connecting with one another, and I also described it kind of like a kink in the hose, but it just sort of kinks your relationship.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think about that union that Jesus has with the Father, that like they have had like perfect unity and harmony and intimacy for eternity. Like they've always been one and it's always been perfect union. And like when we put our faith in Jesus, we are brought into that union. Which is insane. But if we, I think, spend time reflecting on our standing on that, like I've been justified, and so in that union is where I stand, and so nothing I do or don't do can change that status, like what you're saying. I think even just remembering that is motivation to hate sin, because anything that like keeps me from experiencing the fullness of that union that I do have is now frustrating and is like an enemy of mine. And so I no longer want to be like, oh, it's not a big deal, or like it doesn't matter, everybody does it, it's normal. I'm like, no, this is disrupting this precious union that I'm so privileged to be in. So I want to fight against that.
Yes.
Let's talk about some lies we maybe believe about our sin. So I think a lot of times we're tempted to think our sin isn't a big deal. We kind of touched on that. Or we're tempted to think that we're unique. And so because of our unique circumstances, we're uniquely excused to sin in this way. And then I think some other lies that we believe is just kind of resignation of like, I'll never change, like a hopelessness that can just say like, this is how I'll always be. And then kind of to the debt metaphor, I think sometimes we can feel so overwhelmed by our own brokenness, by our debt, that we just think, well, what does it matter? Like, what's another sin? Just add it to my tab. I'm already in so much debt. He's already irritated with me. It doesn't matter if I just keep doing this.
And I wonder too if sometimes we get in that same vein of being overwhelmed by it, we might just think, what am I supposed to do? Like sit down and like list every possible thing that I can come up with, in order to like clear my debt sheet, so to speak. And I think I would say, I think the most accurate answer might be maybe. You might need to do that if the Lord's putting some things on your heart. But I think we need to remember that the record of debt has been canceled. It was set aside and nailed to the cross. That's Colossians chapter 2. And we talked about that on Sunday. So that record of debt has been canceled. And so it's not like, well, if there's stuff that I haven't confessed, then like he'll hold that against me. I think that goes against what Paul said that Christ has done, right? I do think that as we are as we are creating more space with the Lord and listening, as we're reading his word and it's revealing things in our heart, and he brings those things to mind, that's when we need to confess them. And not like just sit down and be like, okay, I need to make a list of all my sin. It's more like as I'm praying through this thing and I realize, or as I'm driving down the road and I kind of want to ram my car into the person, next to me. And I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? Right in that moment, just, Father, would you forgive me for that, that debt right there, that anger that came out from somewhere. Would you forgive me of that?
Yeah. I just want to kind of clarify something you said. So, like, someone might be believing the lie that until they discover a sin and write it down, then God is like withholding his grace and forgiveness until they like find it, which could feel frustrating or feel like discouraging, because then I would feel like, oh man, like I have so many sins that are unknown to me. What if I don't find the one that God is like withholding his grace until I confess it? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying don't do that.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm saying don't do that.
Yes.
Don't think that.
Yeah, God is not like that. He's not like mean in that way where he's just like, until you find this one thing, I'm going to withhold my forgiveness and my grace.
Yeah.
What
like he's holding it behind his back.
Yes.
You know, until you figure it out, until you solve the mystery, until you get out of the panic room or whatever those things are called. It's not called a panic
Escape room.
Escape room.
Yes.
Until you've solved all the puzzles.
Yes.
You don't get the prize.
Right.
That is not what God is doing.
Yes. No, he is so much more gentle and patient and gracious and kind with us than that type lie would lead us to believe about his character.
Yeah.
What are some other lies we might believe about who God is when it comes to confessing our sin or just our sin in general?
Well, this is one I've been talking about a lot over the last several weeks, but just that God is annoyed with us, or that he is only, allowing us into the kingdom because of his obligation to us as God. I said that on Sunday, like when I shared that verse that was just really meaningful to me last week, when Jesus said, "Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." I mean, Jesus meant that. It's his good pleasure. It is his delight to give you the kingdom. So don't be afraid of him, and I think it means don't avoid him thinking that like he's going to crush you. You are in Christ. You belong to him. You are his adopted son and daughter. He's welcoming you to come and bring all your junk that he already knows about.
Yeah.
And what he wants to do is free you of that guilt and that shame.
Yeah.
And even if you're not in Christ, if you've not put your faith in him, there's an invitation to come, come, and trust me with it.
Yes.
And put your faith in Jesus, the one I sent to pay for your sin, and come enjoy relationship with me. That's the invitation.
Yeah.
So it's for all of us to come to him.
Yes. Yeah, and the invitation never gets taken off the table.
That's right.
As I think one lie I am tempted to believe sometimes is like when I discover a sin, I feel like I might need to like show him I'm really sorry and like work a little bit and then he'll forgive me.
There's a word for that, penance.
Yes.
You need to do penance.
Yes. And so that is something that I've found a lot of comfort and joy and relief in, and knowing like that's not how he is. He's not waiting on me to do something before he'll fully forgive me. Like everything that needed to be done has already been finished in Christ. And so the forgiveness is already there, and there's enough forgiveness. Going back to last week, so I think we can believe the lie that there's not enough forgiveness or enough freedom or enough healing to go around, that he's somehow going to run short on that. And just again, like his storehouses of forgiveness and mercy and grace and healing and freedom are so abundant, like they'll never run out. And so there's enough for you and there's enough for me. I don't have to pay penance before I can tap into that storehouse.
Yeah. And I wonder if we believe this to a certain degree. And by the way, I don't think this is new. I don't think we figured this out, or we've come up with this problem, because Paul was writing about it in his letter to the Romans. When there was this objection, like, well, if there's all this grace, where grace abounds, do we just sin all the more? And he's like, no. I think that's Romans 6.
Yes. That's
where he's
right.
just like, no way, may it never be. Right? Like, no, the more we understand how gracious he is, that I think the idea is that we just love him so much more and hate our sin so much more.
Yes.
Right? Like, and like you said a moment ago, like our sin just is less enticing than his grace.
Yeah.
You know? And so we want to like enjoy more of that fellowship with him.
Yes.
More of that union and relationship with him. Because now we're starting to see like, oh, this thing right here disrupts, you know? I was reading yesterday in, I don't know, I'm in the Psalms, and then I was looking at something, and I'm trying to like, you know, be vague, but the Lord brought something to my mind, and it was like, it wasn't like I broke one of the 10 commandments or something. It was like, my heart isn't aligned with his on something. And I just realized, I was like, oh, I wonder if this has been a kink in the hose, so to speak, and I haven't even realized it.
Yeah.
Because I might share it with someone and a friend be like, that's not sin, bro. When like, my heart's not aligned with his heart.
Yeah.
You know?
So that's a big deal.
I don't want something the way I think he probably wants it, and he revealed it to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I was able to, in that moment, just confess that.
Yeah. And God was not mean for showing you that.
No.
Like
no.
that was so kind of him to allow you to see that. But I think so often, anytime we like get a glimpse into something like that, because we can be so like fragile to shame, or like too quick to like call something shame, then we could view that whole process as like a negative thing and feel bad or feel ashamed. When in reality, like that experience is something to rejoice in and be so thankful for, because all of that is proof of your sonship. Like the Lord was kind enough to discipline you in a gentle way because he loves you. But if we're not careful, we'll mistake that and just believe lies of shame, or like that was probably a little bit hard for you to realize and deal with, and it might even cost you something, and that might be difficult, but it's still good. But I think so often another one of the lies we believe is like anything that like brings up difficulty or cost or just anything hard in me that I don't like, that isn't like warm and fuzzy, that is bad, and I don't want to experience that. When in reality, all of that is so good and such a gift. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense.
What was I going to say? Oh, the Romans passage. That was reminding me of a thought I was having about Engage the Heart. I was just like imagining all the living rooms and we meet in our playroom when we do Engage the Heart, all the playrooms, wherever these groups of men and women are gathering to do Engage the Heart. And I was just like imagining, I want there to be so much grace and so much like look at just the scandal of the gospel, that like all of this that we're confessing is actually forgiven and like so readily forgiven. I almost want there to be that like, well, wait, what are you saying? Like, should we just sin all the more so that grace may increase? Like, I almost want it to be like so scandalous and so much grace that it would almost cause someone to be like, wait a minute. Like, and that's what I long for our Engage the Hearts, is that there would just be like so much Jesus, so much like reminder of his forgiveness and his abundance and his grace and his mercy, that it would be scandalous.
The kingdom of abundance and mercy, right? Versus the empire of scarcity and merit. And there is something in us that wants to believe like, there's no way there can be that much grace. You don't deserve it. Which is the antithesis of the word itself. Grace is undeserved favor. It's unmerited. You didn't deserve it. Let's just all lay that out on the table. You don't deserve it. And when I bring this to the guys in my life group and I say, this is my sin. This is where I failed to believe that God was good enough, you know, whatever it might be. Right. Like, and then they say, cause this is the challenge with Engage the Heart, or it's one of them, you know, where it's like, I want to now, like, there's almost something in us. You're using the word scandal. It does feel scandalous to say, you are loved and forgiven.
Yeah.
Like but let's be blown away by that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's let that. Sorry. Let's feel that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beauty and the glory of the gospel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if we're not willing to go there, we miss it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's like why we have to be willing to go deep into our sin and to like the low of feeling our debt so that we can be sprung back up into like the insanity and the scandal of his grace and his mercy in the gospel. But if we avoid the down, if we avoid our sin, if we avoid reflecting on where we're not in alignment with him, if we just don't want to do that hard, painful work of being disciplined by him, then we miss out on the joy of receiving the scandal of the gospel, and we miss out on just that life, the vision of living in the beauty of the gospel. So that brought me to another kind of thing I was thinking about is I think that we can be tempted to not want to reflect on our sin because we're tempted to want to avoid the hard. So what are some things that you think may cause someone to avoid reflecting on their sin? Like they just don't want to do that work. What might be causing them to avoid that?
Well, first thing that comes to my mind is just that for some of us, we're just wired like that doesn't sound fun.
Yes. Yeah.
And we all have those like kind of golden retriever people in our lives that are just like, they're always up for more.
Yes. Right? Enneagram 7s.
Yes. The Enneagram 7. They're like, that sounds fun. Let's do it. And like this sounds awful. And why would we do that when like there's so much love and grace, and it abounds and, why reflect on, on our sin? And I think we just said it like, you can't really experience the depth of God's love for you until you realize he loved you in spite of this thing.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that we avoid things that like feel hard or sad or difficult. So we just want to have fun and keep it light. But then I think another one is like, we just don't take the time to, I think that's something I have to fight is like, that feels like not an efficient use of my time, or I don't want to slow down enough, or like I could give that 10 minutes, but it might take longer than 10 minutes. And so I think just a willingness to slow down and give this the time it deserves, because it's worth our time to do this. Because again, like, and I'm getting this from Dane Ortland's book Deeper, where he uses a trampoline analogy, which is really silly, but it like works perfectly, of just like the deeper you go down in the trampoline, like the higher you spring back up. And so that has been super helpful for me, of just thinking about like, okay, like the deeper I go and acknowledging and feeling the weight of my debts, the higher I get sprung up back into God's grace and mercy, like we just talked about. So just imagine a trampoline.
I love trampolines.
In closing, I want to talk about a couple practical ways that these like debts and sins can come to our mind, can be revealed. You mentioned a few of them, but I think just prayer. So like when we spend time talking to God and listening to him, it's in those moments where he is kind and gentle to reveal things to us. Spending time in his word is another one. So when we read his word, I think we can see clearly like, this is the picture that's being painted, and here's areas in my heart that are not in alignment with that. Another one is sermons. So again, a sermon is like a display and like an unpacking of God's word. And so that's when, by God's grace, he'll use the words of a teacher or pastor to help us see something in our lives. And then another one is the people around you. So if you ever have a hard time like coming up with something to confess or like realizing where you're falling short, think about the thing that your wife has been bringing to your attention, or
Yes.
think about the thing that your close friend or what your coworkers like are trying to point out in you. Because a lot of times I think the Lord is using those people to help you and to sharpen you. What would you add to the list?
Well, I don't know that I was going to add anything to that list, but I was just thinking about how sometimes we may just lack the connection to what's going on in our world, like to sin, like what makes it sin, or what is sinful about this thing, this struggle. So when you said something about, what is the thing that your spouse is bringing up, I immediately, my mind, like God's using it right now, right? I'm thinking about something that I've been avoiding and putting off that my wife's asked me to do. And so like, I don't know that, like, I think in our real like top of mind categories, it's like, that doesn't feel like there's any kind of sin. Although I gave a bunch of words on Sunday to help us kind of like have a much more fuller, rounder definition of that than just breaking the 10 Commandments or something like that, but when we use something like we have at our disposal, like the digging deeper chart that you talk about in core class, and that some of us use during the Engage the Heart time, it starts with that thing of, I'm not doing the thing that my wife asked me to do. And then you start digging deeper to understand like what's behind that behavior. Why am I not doing it? And that why may reveal a lie that I'm believing about myself or about God.
Yeah.
And then I need to be reminded of the truth about who God is and who he's made me to be. And maybe even that all I really need to do is ask him to help me with this thing. And then all of a sudden I'm on my way back up, right?
Yes.
On the trampoline analogy,
Yeah.
I'm on my way up now, believing this truth. And I realize like the reason I was doing it, and the brokenness of that. And then hopefully by the time I'm bounced up, like that behavior has changed.
Yes.
I'm not putting it off anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super helpful. And you're not changing that behavior just for sake of changing the behavior. Like you have done the work of digging deeper into like what's going on in your heart and the truth of the gospel and the truth of who God really is and the truth of who you really are is now what's motivating new behavior. Because I think we have to be careful not to just try to like fix the behavior. And that's the point of this digging deeper chart is to like help you get underneath it and ask like, what lie, what idol, what desire, what is driving this, what's up underneath it, because often that is the debt, so to speak, that like we really need off our backs, because I think it can be easy to just like manage the surface level moles, if you will, and just like whack those. But if we're not getting up underneath and figuring out like what's the source of this, then we're just going to be playing whack-a-mole and it's just going to come out somewhere else. But when we can identify what's really up underneath it and then identify the truth of the gospel that transforms that and like heals that and brings freedom to that, then we're really like onto something.
Yes.
So we'll add the digging deeper chart into the show notes, and I'll also put it on the app under the life groups categories for people if you want to pull it up there. This tool I have found really helpful for not just using and Engage the Heart, but like kind of putting just to memory and this like route I feel like I take most nights as I'm going to bed as I think kind of through this. And the more you practice it and the more you kind of reflect on it for yourself personally, the more confident you can get in helping others walk through it as well.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're having coffee with somebody, or you're hanging out, or you're on a road trip, or you're shooting basketball, and they're sharing something with you and you're able to ask good questions that help them. And then all of a sudden we're like, this is what this is what we were made for.
Yes.
We are new creations now in Christ's was that 2 Corinthians 5:17, somewhere around there. And now, like, we've been created in this new way with the Spirit of God living within us. And this is our purpose now, to help and guide others out of the darkness and into the light, where there's freedom and joy and victory, and we can all be a part of that.
Yes. Yeah. And it's so fun. There's so much joy in that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, and we will be back next week.
See ya.